Prime Minister Mark Carney appointed his cabinet ministers today with a mix of change and continuity as former ministers were dropped and newly elected MPs were elevated. So to talk about this more is our political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, joining us from a lovely residential area in Hamilton, Ontario. Brian, welcome back to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so Brian, before we get into the names here, give us the numbers. How many people are in? How many people are out?
24 new people are in cabinet. I just want people to let that sink in. This is massive. He dropped 11 people, and so we're with secretaries of state and full cabinet ministers. We're just under 40, but 24 new people. I'm still Googling some of them to figure out who they are and why they're in cabinet, and do they have any of the qualifications. So people like Bill Blair were dropped, and then people that you've never heard of are now in charge of major portfolios. We can get into that in a moment, but this is a major shakeup, and clearly a sign that Mark Carney wanted to send the message that this is not the same cast of characters. There are some, but this is not the same cast of characters that ran the Trudeau government.
Okay, so Brian, is there anything then in that appointment that should give hope or worry to residents of Alberta who are maybe looking for changes in how our natural resources are treated?
Both. So there's both hope and worry. Hope in that the new Minister of Energy and Natural Resources is a guy who comes from the business world. His name is Tim Hodgson, a longtime friend of Mark Carney. They worked together at various places, including they both had stints at Goldman Sachs, the international banking firm. Hodgson was an advisor to Mark Carney when he was governor of the Bank of Canada. He has extensive experience at the executive level in the private sector, sitting on boards, all kinds of, good, solid business experience. And so you might hope that that means they're going to take a more business approach towards the oil and gas sector, towards agriculture, towards the natural resources that Alberta, much of Western Canada, much of the country, quite frankly, relies upon. Jonathan Wilkinson was a true believer in Mark Carney's net zero vision. He was not the guy for the job, so Wilkinson's out, Tim Hodgson's in. I think, if you were to ask people in Alberta, either politically or in those sectors, they would say, we're hopeful, but let's wait and see. On the other side, Julie Desbruzen is the Liberal MP for Toronto Danforth. She's from the left wing of the Liberal Party, so the Environment Minister is now from downtown Toronto. And you can probably guess the types of positions that she's going to take, and that could really be a thorn in the side for the sectors that we were just talking about. Will she ease anything on the oil and gas sector? Will she be stricter? What about the fertilizer issue, the methane emissions from fertilizer that they were so hot to trot about a year or two ago and then backed off in the face of pressure? Both of those things, it seems like a yin and a yang here, a blessing and a curse at the same time. And so really the best that I can tell you is stay tuned.
Okay, then. Brian, let's talk about some of the big files that have had problematic issues for the Trudeau government in the past and whether Carney's appointments will solve these issues. So we're looking at Sean Fraser as justice. So is that good or bad?
I don't see anything good about Sean Fraser going to justice. This is the guy who broke the immigration system, was a disaster at housing, and now he's going to be in charge of the justice file. And some people will say, yeah, but he was a lawyer. He was a lawyer in Calgary, no less. Yeah, he worked at Blake's in Calgary. He, had a specialization in access to information. That's not exactly criminal justice. And we've got a real problem with criminal justice. Violent crime is up. The bail system is broken. Is he going to do the hard work that every premier in the country, including New Democrats in BC and Manitoba, Liberals in Newfoundland, and conservative-leaning premiers elsewhere have all asked for, which is fix the revolving door bail system so that these guys who are doing home invasions and carjackings and violent crimes. And we've got a story on the front page of the Toronto Sun today. Violent sexual assault, guys out on bail, commits again. Like, these guys just keep getting out on bail. Will Sean Fraser do that? I don't see it. And that's a real problem. You need someone in there who knows the justice system. Sean Fraser represents the same riding that Peter MacKay did in Central Nova in Nova Scotia. Peter MacKay was a Crown prosecutor before he became a politician. Sean Fraser worked for a cup of coffee doing administrative legal work and now is in charge of Canada's justice system.
Wow. Okay. Former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is back in cabinet, but with a much more subdued role. So are you able to tell us more about the significance of this appointment?
So she's staying in transportation, and it's interesting. Yesterday morning, and that's what Mark Carney had put her in his first cabinet. You know, the 2-month cabinet that just expired with the new cabinet being sworn in today. So he kept her in after he won the leadership, and then yesterday, rumors started swirling that she may be out when the cabinet is revealed on Tuesday morning. And so all through the day, talking to different people, mostly Liberals, it was chatter after chatter about a diplomatic appointment. That Chrystia Freeland was going to resign as an MP and take a big appointment. And of course, there's no way that she could have gone to somewhere like Washington. Donald Trump even said he hated her while he was sitting next to Mark Carney last week. You've got the fact that she probably hates Donald Trump. So what are the big diplomatic posts? You know, was it going to be the United Nations in New York, the EU in Brussels, or London? And by the end of the day, lots of people were hearing that she's going to be in London. Turns out not true. Rumors and speculation abound at cabinet appointments. So she stays in transportation, which is a very important file, but it's not considered one of the top tier ones in Ottawa. In Washington, it is a top cabinet position. And right now, the American administration is dealing with revamping their air traffic control system, which is a disaster. And they're looking at perhaps adopting the Canadian model on that to update it. But so she's in charge of, you know, air traffic control. She's in charge of cross-border transportation. She's in charge of the rail systems. Important job, but probably, yeah, definitely a step down from Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Okay. Lena Diab is the new immigration minister. That's a big position there. So what can you tell us about her?
She's one of the ones that you're going to be Googling, unless you're from Nova Scotia, which is where she hails from. And she was in provincial politics for many years before jumping to the federal level in 2021. She is a lawyer as well. Her parents were immigrants. I can't remember, actually tell from her bio if it was her parents or grandparents were immigrants from Lebanon. It says she's the children of first-generation Canadians, so I would assume her parents immigrated from Lebanon. She has that family understanding of the system, but this is one of the systems that is really broken in Canada that needs fixing. So this is a big job. Is she up for doing it? She's never held a job this big before. We just saw a news report that 25,000 foreign students claimed asylum last year. That's a record number, and we're on track to beat it this year. We've got in Toronto 9,000, almost 10,000 people a night being housed in the shelter system, and half of them are asylum claimants. We're bringing in 58,000 people. Outside of those students I mentioned, 58,000 people last year showing up at our land crossings, our marine crossings, at our airports, and declaring asylum. That's a decent-sized city, 58,000 people. And on top of that, the full-time immigration system is broken. So this is a big job that's going to someone without much in the way of experience. To me, that's worrisome.
It looks like Bill Blair was also dropped from the Defense Department and from cabinet completely. And then David McGuinty, also after only spending a few weeks as public safety minister, takes over as defense now. So what does that tell us, Brian?
Well, as someone who has often fought, sometimes on live television, with Bill Blair, I'm not going to be sad at this one. Minister Blair and I don't know what it is. I appear to rub him the wrong way. And so he's out, but David McGuinty, I'm not going to, this is a good appointment. David McGuinty has been an MP for 21 years. He was a lawyer in real practice, unlike Sean Fraser. Before that, he is someone who knows his way around Parliament, knows how the system works. He chaired the Committee of Parliamentarians looking into national security issues, well respected. He's someone that if he'd been dropped from cabinet after only finally getting in Mark Carney's first cabinet of 2 months ago, I would have been disappointed. But This is a big step up to national defense, another area where we've got major problems. We've got a recruitment problem that needs fixed. There's the ongoing fallout of a couple of reports on sexual impropriety in the workplace within the Canadian Armed Forces. All of these things need fixed. David McGuinty's someone, despite not having that huge departmental role before, is someone that's been around long enough, knows how the system works, and I believe can get things done.
Okay. Melanie Jolie has been replaced at Foreign Affairs with Anita Anand. Is this a significant shift? Feels like it.
It's an interesting shift because
Yeah.
Jolie goes over to industry, which had been, for many years, Francois Philippe Champagne, who is Mark Carney's finance minister. In Ottawa, the people who run foreign affairs consider themselves the prince and princesses of the parliamentary or the Ottawa scene. They are it. They're the most important department in their view. So this is definitely a demotion for Melanie Jolie. In terms of change in policy, probably not. Melanie Jolie was taking Canada very clearly on one of the most important issues of the day, which is the war in the Middle East. She was taking Canada away from a position that was supportive of Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, or at least neutral, to being supportive of Hamas in Gaza. Anita Anand is very much the same. She even gave speeches during the election campaign in her riding that said that she was moving in that direction. Mark Carney himself, I believe, even though he hasn't been as open about it, I think is headed in that direction. That is disturbing for me. On issues such as Ukraine, there won't be much of a difference. When it comes to the United States, hopefully she plays it slow and steady. We've got Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who's given that special charge of dealing with Canada-U.S. relations, so that's almost off and on's plate. So no change on Ukraine. Moving is towards Hamas and away from Israel in the war in the Middle East.
Oh, that's a huge change there. Okay, so Brian, switching gears here, the cost of housing and affordability it was a major issue during the election campaign, obviously. So what signal is the Prime Minister sending by appointing Gregor Robertson as Minister of Housing?
Now, he's the former mayor of Vancouver who oversaw the housing prices in Vancouver skyrocket out of control. So I think he's sending the message that competence doesn't matter as much as celebrity, because he was a bit of a star celebrity candidate who did well for the Liberals in the Vancouver area, despite a dismal record. I don't think this is a good sign. The federal government has the least responsibility for housing. The most responsibility is with your local municipality, which Gregor Robertson was in charge of and was disastrous on. Then it's the provincial government, then it's the federal government. But the federal government has been trying to flex muscle, exert more control, move things forward. Are we really going to trust a guy who was overseeing the doubling of housing prices in Vancouver? Apparently so. And again, so this whole cabinet, I can objectively look at and say, that's a good appointment, that's a bad appointment. This one falls squarely in the bad appointments category.
Okay, it looks like we're out of time here, but political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.